So hello and welcome to another Nothing But Love webinar episode for 2024. My name is Russ Gluyas and I coordinate ACON's aging program, the Love Project, for living older visibly and engaged. The Love Project aims to empower older LGBT communities, including people living with HIV, to lead healthy, active and more socially connected lives. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging the Gadigal people, who are the traditional owners and custodians and first people of the land on which I'm joining you from tonight. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and would like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us online tonight as well. And I also invite you to put into the chat what lands you're joining us from. I'd like to start with the New South Wales Government for supporting this series of webinars. We're also collaborating with ACON's Northern Rivers team to deliver several in-person events, as well as these webinars highlighting our fabulous regional community members. So watch out for those coming up. The Love Project marks its 10th anniversary this year. So what better way to celebrate than to chat with fabulous LGBTQ plus community heroes, activists, icons, performers, creatives, authors, and business owners who truly represent our older community members. So without further ado, our guests tonight are Victoria Spence and Sarah Barry from Life Rites Funerals. They are an independent holistic funeral director, offering personalised doula support, funeral and ceremonial services. So welcome, Vic and Sarah.
Thank you, Russ.
Really nice to see you. Full disclosure, I've met Vic and Sarah probably early 2022, just shortly after we launched the online Taking Control LGBTQ toolkit for palliative care and end-of-life decision-making. I was disappointed that I didn't connect earlier, but we have now, and I've had the privilege of witnessing some of your beautiful work over the last couple of years. I know how well regarded you are in the community, so I'm really excited to have you share some of your stories.
Thank you.
So let's start just by getting a little bit of a background on both of you. Some of the backstory for you personally, and also what sort of led you into building the fabulous Life Right Funerals model. Vic?
Okay, well, I might start with that. My name's Victoria, and I'm speaking to you from Bidjigal land here in Hurstville, in our beautiful old school funeral home. And really, this Life Rites, the model of care as that exists today, really began for me to consolidate and reveal the need through the 90s. Really, through the 90s, I had a couple of very important personal losses, and then an enormous amount of deaths of my friends. So at that point in the 90s, I was what I guess we'd call then a dyke, a young lezo,
Yeah.
living in the inner city of Sydney. And many of my friends, I was working in the arts at that point, and many of my friends, gay men, particularly some lesbians, many of whom were HIV positive, developed AIDS, and an enormous amount of those people died. And I watched in those years our community mobilise. I watched our community be decimated. I was sometimes up close and personal in some deaths, and other times further back in the field.
Mm.
And I journeyed with the survivors of HIV and AIDS, the people who kept living, who buried their partners, their lovers, their boyfriends, their girlfriends. And I really noticed through the decade of the 90s into the early 2000s, how when a death was completely disenfranchised or not congruent to the people, when the funeral was not reflective of the person or key people didn't have a voice, that people didn't heal, that grief didn't do the work it should have and could have and needed to. And in the 90s also, both my parents died and a number of very, very close people to me. And I really just threw my hands up in utter despair at the sort of McFuneral impotent state of our funeral rites and our funeral industry. And coming out of queer subculture and experimental performance and lots of dance floors and making lots of cultural work, I really felt like I had something in my kit bag that was going to be very relevant to people when they were approaching the key events of their lives. So in the early 2000s, 2001 and 2, I very consciously stepped in and retrained as a celebrant. I did a master's in death, dying and palliative care to learn how to speak social work and medical model. I did a counselling degree in grief counselling and family systems. And I really just put my hand up and said, I am the death literate person in our community. Come to me first. And I really just had a few things in my kit bag, and I really understood the power of advocacy and ceremony. And I just began to take a little pickaxe to the David and Goliath wall of the industrial funeral industry. And 20 years later, here we are in our own little space with our own model of care that is completely LGBTQI plus owned, created. It's come out of all of the HIV and AIDS deaths, and in a way, none of those people died in vain as long as we're here, because this model of care came from that.
Was it a slow build, or was there a bit of an overwhelming start? Like once people knew about you, did people
Yes.
sort of come out of the woodwork to?
Yes, it was a slow build to find our way into becoming a funeral director. So at first I started as a celebrant and I said, come to me first. And then I went to some funeral directors because it was a very closed shop industrial model. You couldn't get into the bricks and mortar premises. It was like, it's all owned by the tow truck drivers and the freight haulers, and it was very difficult barriers to entry. So I basically just thought, right, I'm going to broker relationships with some good people that are funeral directors. I'm going to bring my people to them, and I'm going to make them dismantle their pricing structure and take what we need from them. So to be honest, it was 10 to 15 years of deep diving cultural work, finding the gaps, filling them, becoming more informed in the funeral industry, retraining, and really just becoming a sort of passionate advocate for the fact that we can do this differently and better. So yes, I was pretty busy. If you want to know, I've been the last 20 years. I've been busy.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
And then at a certain point, what happened, Russ, was there was a tipping point in the community. When I first started, maybe early 2000s, people didn't want to hear about my work in death and dying. By the mid 2000s, I couldn't shut people up. That's all I wanted to talk about. So sometimes cultural change is the people who lead it, but then there's a tipping point in the culture, and that's definitely also part of why we're here. Because people were less willing to settle for a one-size-fits-all McFuneral.
Beautiful. Well, we'll dig into that more. Sarah, when did you step in? Give us a little bit of your backstory.
Well, hello, I'm Sarah, and I stepped into Life Rites in October 2020, but my interest in end-of-life care started many years before that. I remember sitting around the dinner table with my uncle when I was a teenager in the 90s. He was volunteering at Sacred Heart Hospice, and I remember just kind of being a bit of a kid about asking him questions. Oh, is it gross or something? And he just said, so no, it's not. And that kind of really stayed with me. And then 2003, one of my good friends, Emma, died very young, very unexpectedly. And that just kind of catapulted me into exploring that more and more. I started volunteering at Sacred Heart Hospice when I was 28 years old, 2005, and I did that for 4 years. And alongside all of that, I was building and growing my professional tarot reading business. And so I'd really gotten used to and was loving sitting with people in really deep spaces, crossroads of their life, threshold moments, at times, navigating trauma of their own. And so as a result, it was kind of always pointing towards the deeper stuff that led to me becoming a doula. And then in 2020, after many conversations with Vic over the years as friends, just, and she'd be, this is what I'm looking for in Life Rites. Go, oh yeah, cool. I'll keep an eye out, keep an ear out for people who might be able to do that with you. And then it suddenly hit me, oh, I can do that. And I did the training with Preparing the Way and stepped into Life Rites as a doula, and then very quickly stepped into our mortuary, which we believe is probably the only queer and trans safe mortuary that we know of in the country.
Wow.
And I know that there are people doing very respectful work in other places for sure, but we really have this whole holistic form of care so that we could, in terms of holistic, we want it to be for everyone, the living and the dead as well.
Well, that's probably a good segue into our next question to give me a bit more of an understanding of what a doula does. And also, I'm really keen to learn more about kind of what holistic means in the sense of what Life Rites is all about. Would you like to go for that one, Sarah?
I think I can speak to doulaing. I think I'd like us both to, because Vic really stepped into doulaing, really before doulaing became a word, how we describe this.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to say about doulaing, people say, I've never heard of an end-of-life doula or a death doula. I say, well, have you heard of a birth doula? And in many ways, it's quite similar. It's something significant about to happen in your life, and you want to try and get as prepared as possible for it, for yourself, but the people around you. And so you don't have to be actively dying. It's not like we just show up at the deathbed. People contact us years before. Like one of my clients I've been working with for over 3 years now. She is.
And is that because they're older, or that they have an illness, or
both? So I think if we understand that the root of the word doula, it means to serve, and what it really is it's somebody that can walk with families and individuals in their specific context and offer what in the health system is called patient-centered care or person-centered care, which doesn't really happen given that our health system, one, is struggling, and two, is looking after a population. So a doula offers very practical and emotional support and information. So some people are in fine health, but they're aging. And so they are going, well, I'm in this part of my life, and what do I need to know, and what do I need in my kit bag? And there's been many changes in our health landscape. VAD is one of them. Those advanced care plans or advanced, care directives, those things are very nuanced documents. And so a doula is a very useful person to do a bit of a deep dive into that before you have your 15-minute appointment with your GP. Doulas can also help broach and broker difficult conversations around end of life and what's important and who are your people. Doulas can also be like, we've just looked after or doulaed a lesbian woman whose partner died of cancer, and we looked after her partner when she died, or her wife. And then this person, she really, really lent on our care and took advantage of our care for the next couple of years until she died. And we're still working with the person that's managing her estate to care for all of her things. So it's very
So it's an incredibly intimate process.
Very intimate. And it's around kitchen tables and cups of tea and conversations, and it sort of is what the social system should provide for us. At this point, for many reasons, we've lost a lot of that social cohesion, and the doula can really fit that role. And also, what I find after many years of doulaing is people don't need to take emotional responsibility for me. So I know that Sarah will concur, and all the doulas on her team go, people can talk to us about things, they can't talk to the people they love, because it's painful.
And I love the fact that it's queer doulaing for queer people.
100%.
So you have that lived experience. You already, like, that's that innate sort of experience of life that we all have that bonds us.
I think that sense of recognition, and I just know from the queer people we've worked with, just that sense of not having to explain, just
Yeah.
like, hello, here
Yeah.
we are. I think that is just of enormous value.
Yeah, look, I love that because I often speak to community members around sort of aged care and palliative care, and their greatest fears are really sort of not being seen or going into a service that won't see them, won't recognize them, or
That's right.
they'll feel like they have to hide again and not share, not be open. That limits kind of what they receive. And yeah, it's sad. So to hear that it's sort of such a um, open expression of who we are
Yeah.
And
is
really understanding families of choice
Yeah.
and how important they are, alongside or not families of origin, and people's different sort of identities and where and how they live. Like, that's often really lacking for members of our community, is a sense that I'm safe,
yeah.
to these people. I'm going to talk about challenging and possibly vulnerable topics, and I feel personally vulnerable because I'm not sure whether I'm recognized by the person I'm talking to. So, that's a big part of why we're here and what we do here.
Mm. And another part of what you do is sort of guidance and counselling. You said you're a counsellor, Vic,
Yeah.
and Sarah too.
Counselor
Or
English in
yeah,
the
look, we're all
not
counsellors,
trained,
aren't we?
but
We're all
learned
we all have
wisdom.
the capacity
Yeah.
to be with someone, so
Yeah.
hence we are counsellors.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of grief circle
Yes.
sort of stuff, is that sort of a big part of the
Part
work
of
that you
that
do,
work.
or
Yeah. So I think at Life Rites, we have a fair amount of queer people on our team,
yeah,
many of whom are doulas. There's a couple of counsellors, so trained counsellors, and doulas also offer guidance. So guidance is really being able to help people map the health system or the aged care system or the funeral system, or really just to be able to be a bit of a scout, and the grief counselling. So the most offensive thing about funeral rites being dismantled into an industrial model is that funeral ceremonies, funeral rites, the choices we make as we approach our own mortality or we bear witness to that of someone we love, is it's meant to give us something. And all we know in the 20th and 21st century so far is what death takes. And
yeah,
that's possibly the greatest crime of the way that our funeral rites have been shaped to a market economy. And so what we do at Life Rites is, at any point you recognize the need for information or support, you step forward. And then we travel with you, with our team, through your life, a serious diagnosis, or just your life coming to its completion. And we can really provide literacy and support for you to understand what's important to you at this time, what's important for your legacy, what's important for your ceremony, for how you live before you die, how you care for people you love, so that we all come out of this with more in our kit bag than we went in. And I think that's really, when we talk about the holistic model, it's about putting people back together. It's about giving people information, support, so that you can enact your agency, not so we go do it our way.
yeah,
We can be a concierge process, for want of a better word,
yeah,
person, or we can
yeah,
say, all right, here you go, we'll be the door bitches of the
yeah,
minute,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
just let you do your
yeah,
thing. Because for me, the funeral rite is meant to lay the best foundation for healthy grieving. And I truly believe that in some situations, the rise of complicated grief has got a lot to do with the dissolution of our funeral rites. And we're really trying, one person and one family at a time, to shift that.
mm,
So the sense of not disappearing after the funeral and saying,
yeah,
all right, well, there you go, to have counselling available, ongoing grief counselling, or for people to come at any point for counselling. And then we offer at Life Rites, for all the families that have come to us as funeral directors, we offer a free monthly grief circle, which is held by two other members of our team, a non-binary human called Jude, and Sky, one of our doulas. and Jude's our other counsellor. And it's a really beautiful 2.5 hour experience for people that come to our premises on a Saturday afternoon once a month, and really continue to build community and not feel alone. There's so much of our grieving we now feel like we have to do alone because we've lost those communal spaces.
I love that idea of death gives
Yeah,
rather
it
than
does.
takes. Yeah.
It does.
Pardon
You
me.
know, it undoes you, but it
Yeah.
gives you something: maturity, compassion, insight,
Yeah.
care, so many things. But you have to show up for it and be supported. And
Yeah.
if funeral rites are just all about outsourcing it and dumbing it down, then it's harder for
Yeah.
death.
Well, look, I've had that experience of kind of dumbing it down with sort of some funerals that I've had been involved with, and then had the experience sort of with both of you, where really it's an invitation for the person to create something for themselves and a time for them to be really open and have those conversations with you.
Mm.
It's incredibly special.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
W- in regards to sort of how people can have funerals, um, can you give me a bit of an idea of sort of like what do people do? Like, how far do they go? Like, do they have small things, big things? Like, what goes on?
All of it, small
All
things,
of
big
it?
things, religious, non-religious. Quite often over the last few years, stepping into arrangement meetings with people, and they're like, "Oh, well, we don't want anything religious," and they're quite serious about it. It's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, yeah, no need, that's fine," and almost thinking that that's what they've got to fight, because that's just what they expected. It has to happen in a church. There has to be a minister, even though no one at the table identifies with religion in that particular way. So sometimes people get really creative. It can just be something really small and intimate. It doesn't actually have to be a funeral per se. People might just have something very private, like be privately cremated, no song and dance, and then later there'll be a memorial dinner, or
Gathering at the pub.
yeah, it can be
yeah,
like a picnic. It can be a releasing party of releasing of the ashes if they got cremated. And so I think, it can be as serious or as colourful as you like. We often get people saying we don't want any black, we want there to be lots of colour,
yeah,
there to be laughter, we don't want this to be serious and morbid, we want there to be jokes. It's like there's this real sense
yeah,
of it can be something really uplifting and funny, but it can also just be really quiet and just very sensitive. And it really just depends on who it is, what they want.
yeah. Have you
So
have you stepped into that space of doing stuff prior to someone dying?
yeah,
Yeah,
Sarah
yeah,
just did one.
Yeah.
yeah.
Could you
So
tell us a little bit about that?
So my friend and doula client Annie, and she's very open about living with end stage cancer. She's on Instagram. She's very popular. Annie Autumn
Annie
Loves.
Autumn.
Yeah. Annie Autumn
Copy.
Loves
Yep.
Instagram. And she's incredible. And she was very clear that when we first started chatting about this, specifically about me coming on as her doula in March 2021, that she's like, yeah, living wake. She got clear that, funerals, memorials, they're different. Okay. And living wake. Oh, yeah. And she was just very clear that she wanted to hear all the stories of love, so she wanted to have a party. And so she chose to have that in November last year down in Corma. She's in Bega, so South Coast. So I went down for that, and it was the most brilliant, colourful, flamboyant, extraordinary, life-changing experience for everyone involved.
Wow.
And on all day. And
Her
it was,
coffin was there that you could paint and decorate.
yeah,
With her.
with
Yeah,
her,
with her
yeah.
there.
Wow. Yeah.
She had this huge throne on the
Yeah,
stage.
she wanted a friend to create a big throne for her, so for her to lie down so she could be comfortable. It was a big day bed. It had "We Love Annie" and this giant rainbow,
Wow.
so that her friend, who's an artist, Claire James, made, with all these candles in sand that people could light. There was a merch table. She was also trying to raise funds just for end of life expenses as well.
Yeah.
She made the choice to have the coffin outside in the veranda, just is being sensitive around her family's needs as well, her life,
Yeah.
what
So
they
collaborative and caring and
absolutely.
They're
wow.
very
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And there have been people for for many years who have had living wakes as extravagant as that or smaller.
Yeah.
And I think many people, especially in a secular sense, think, oh, do we just have to have the funeral in the crematorium chapels? And the
Yeah.
answer is no. When I first started, 20 years ago now, it was very challenging to have what we now call a site-specific funeral. But that's no longer the case. There's been many of us who have been pioneering this, which has been around dispelling the myths about having a funeral, or a funeral is where your coffin is present, and a
Yeah.
memorial is where you have been buried or cremated or aquamated
Yep.
beforehand. So there was a lot of reassurance and information that needed to be given to people that ran council venues or surf clubs around there's no public health issues to have a coffin in a public space. And I did a lot of those conversations in the early 2000s. And when I would say to people things like, you're a community venue and this is one way you can serve your community, and your person that you are, there's no OH&S issues, there's no public health issues here, like here's the letter from the public health department, it's all good. It was actually surf clubs, community venues, and like town halls, particularly the City of Sydney. I remember a very powerful meeting with the person that ran the signature venues at the City of Sydney to allow, Glebe Town Hall and other town halls to hold services with people's coffin present. And that has just transformed the funeral landscape.
Yeah.
Because what that means is you can have a ceremony in one place, and the ceremony then leads into the wake. What often happens in those situations is sometimes people in their coffin stay for the party. So they mightn't have had a living wake, but people get to be physically proximal to someone's coffin, to ride on it. All of this also is hand in glove with more eco-friendly, sustainable materials becoming part of our funeral rites, and not those sort of traditional Victorian coffin aesthetics. So you can have funerals in all sorts of spaces. Outdoor spaces is still probably a bit trickier, but that's partly because you often need a bit more intimacy for a funeral rite, say, than you do a wedding, which often happens outdoors. So the landscape, literally and metaphorically, of how we celebrate and honour and bring ceremony to our dead, and how we reconnect the living, it's really changed since death has become more part of life. And I think that's been the driving message of a number of us who have been working in the sort of advocacy space around death and dying for many years, is death is a part of life. Let's pull it back from these cultural blind spots. It's yours, it's mortality, it's happening to all of us. Let's be present and let's make it be creative and reflective of who we are. Or, on Friday, in that really rainy Friday, I was at Northern Suburbs Crematorium, beautiful old crematorium, beautiful gardens, with a family of 10 people who just sat there and looked at images of their person and listened to music for 35 minutes, chatted amongst themselves, breathed out, looked at the coffin and the flowers. And it was the most intimate, beautiful, powerful rite. And then we'll regather in a month. This woman was a, bastion of her community. Everyone loved her. There'll be over 150 people at her big memorial. So I think
So lots of different ways of kind of,
so many.
yeah. So you
and
sort of really, the illusion of sort of the mainstream industry of kind of that package, that you sort of just go in, you buy a package, and this is what we do, and then we put that music on there, and then we do this, and
this coffin or that coffin, silver, gold, or bronze. What do you want? I mean, that exists because of the business model of the funeral industry, and we run a sales model. Our business is service oriented. We have a very clear and transparent pricing structure. We're very flexible. We totally don't make as much profit as the big end of town. We're not in it for that. We do need to stay afloat.
Of course.
being able to say to people, this is what it costs. We have a company fee that goes over the top. And if you're struggling, then price needn't be a barrier to quality.
So you're with people the whole way. So
Mm-hmm.
someone, could you maybe give us a bit of an idea of that journey? Because I think I'm a bit more aware of it now, having seen kind of what you do. But and I was astounded that it was such a journey that you are with someone quite tightly and
Intimately, yeah.
wholly. Could
Yeah.
you just maybe touch on that a little bit? That sort of idea of being with someone all the way through?
Yes. So all the way through can begin at any point from a terminal illness or a serious illness diagnosis, or when people are aging, or when, and sometimes it's friends or adult children of people that come to us and go, you know, mum, dad, or my wife, my partner is aging, and we will meet people and help and listen to what's important to them. Um, Say, for example, if people come to us knowing that the end of their life is approaching, then we can have conversations with them. Many people want to come here to know where they're going to end up.
Yeah.
They want to be able to know who's going to look after them. They meet the team. We do work as a team. And so it might be that you meet myself or Sarah first, or Kim, but there's many people behind us, and we do hold each other, and that's a big part of what makes the long journey sustainable for us, is we're
Yeah.
not doing it all alone. But we will work with people as they're dying, after they've died, so through their death, and often that's in the doula realm, the guidance realm, the counseling realm, and then those relationships already exist, and then we step into the funeral part. Sometimes those conversations have happened, but we will meet with people and sit around a table, key people. There's two processes that run parallel. One is always the care of the person who's died, and Sarah and Vicky and other people in the mortuary have held that very intimately. And then there's, what does their funeral look like? So we will work in that
Yeah.
way, in very intimate, sometimes very intense situations. We work with building a context that meets all the needs of the people around the table, because they're not always in accord.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a hallmark of our process, is it's very person-centered, and we can always reframe it and recontextualize it so that people might want different things, and our service model and the way we work we can be flexible enough to accommodate that. So
And
then,
people can be cared for after death
yeah,
for quite a while. So it doesn't have to be an urgent
no, so
completion. Like,
Well, if people die at home, for example, in New South Wales, your body can be at home in proper conditions for
yep,
up to 5 days before coming into a mortuary that a funeral director is responsible for.
yep,
And then there can be some care that takes place there if people are wanting to be a part of that system. Not everyone will die at home though, so that's just for that particular space.
yeah,
Sometimes have died at the hospital and we bring them home for a
hmm,
moment just to be with family and friends before they then come again into our mortuary. And then the care will take place again in our mortuary. And usually people are with us from any time between a few days up to a couple of
couple of
weeks,
weeks.
sometimes a bit longer, depending on what's going on,
right,
whether people are held up with flights, whatever. That happened more often during COVID,
Mm.
where the borders were closed. It took a lot longer for people to come
sure.
into.
So that's the home visual aspect, is it? It's sort of like you can stay at home for 5 days, so people do have a chance to sort of come and see you um,
Yes.
and say
And
their goodbyes and
and I think what that also allows is for people who have been caring for their person at home, we're often actively involved in that, because that's where doulas can really come into their own and be very useful. But it is that sense of not going, okay, well, your person's died, the medical system finishes, now you're on your own with the funeral director. This is where the life rights
yeah,
model of care is really comes into its own, because the relationships with us which you've built continue, and we are the transitional supports at those
yeah,
times, because that's where things can go wrong. That's where people can feel let down. and we provide that continuity of care all the way through. You know, as Sarah said, the hands-on care, the creation of the funeral, our ceremonial work is something that we take very seriously, and we put a lot of thought into what that is. And we've also, all of us, we're queer, so we know how to put on an
Yeah.
event.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right, so you know, we pay a lot of attention to the music and to the visual tributes and to the beautiful aesthetics of the order of service, and to the really powerful experience everyone walks through the door that wants to and need to say goodbye to that person receives. And then we follow up the key people, offer them ongoing grief counselling and the free grief circle, and then invite them to be part of our community if they want to come back. We run public programs, we run film nights, we did queer death care for Mardi Gras. We really want to utilise the fact that we've got this beautiful old school funeral home, the likes of which doesn't really exist in the hands of independents. And we want people to be able to come here and see our beautiful mortuary and our premises, and again, just take the fear of the invisibility of what happens in these spaces out of it.
A lot, but this is a bit of an unscheduled question, but it's not too hard. A lot of people might think, oh, it must be really hard to work in this space with sort of death and dying all the time. What do you both do to kind of balance kind of the work that you do? Because it's, as person-centered people and doing this incredibly intimate care, like you can't not be impacted or affected by it to some way or to some degree.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Are there ways or rituals or things that you do to sort of, I don't know, let go or take care of yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for me, it's about maintaining ongoing supervision
Yep.
with my psychologist, being
Beautiful.
able to talk about anything in a really confidential space, that because I'm not going to be, hey, this is who we're looking after. Like it's all private. We do talk within the team as well. At the end of ceremonies, we'll just have a moment, and sometimes we'll need a bit more of a follow up depending on what happened with each other. So we'll either do that again with each other, or again, outside support with supervision.
Yeah.
Looking after our bodies, I've got a yoga. I do Japanese yoga quite regularly now. So just kind of, and I really like that. Just it's very somatic based, and just got opening up the body, releasing
Beautiful.
things. Dance floors are perfect for shaking.
Yeah.
Working, I just call it, I'm working something out on the dance floor, and I just kind of go
Yeah.
off, fling myself around.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everyone on our team is required to have a supervisor, and to see their supervisor regularly. And so for me, I have a supervisor. I have a counsellor. I also do the same yoga, although I missed this month's rehearsal. Enrolling. I have acupuncture regularly.
Yeah.
I've just started a strengths-based training. I talk about building up the mortality muscle. Inside our team, we have 4 yearly sort of ceremonies. We meet 4 times a year, and twice of those times we just reflect upon the people we've cared for in each half of the year. Just recently, we did probably one of the biggest, most intense funeral processes of my practice, definitely speaking personally and for the team. And we had a very extensive debrief, and then we followed that up the next day with going out for dinner with one of the other people who was involved in that process. And I have a friend that I sort of debrief with regularly, or co-counsel with regularly, or she listens to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there is a truckload of care behind us, and the truth is, I cry. I take baths. I've got 2 silly dogs that I love that I walk around the river. I have a fire pit in my backyard, and we've had many fires, Sarah and I, and Sarah's wife and friends, on a personal, friendship level.
Yeah.
I've been pretty undone by this recent process that I was in, and I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow just to check I've got another session. So we really understand that to step up for this work, we're not pretending it's real. And, we build up what we call our mortality muscle, but we do that not by shutting down, but by opening up, doing it the other way, building our emotional literacy, our community, and paying attention to transitions. So every time I leave the funeral home or a family's home, I just sort of imagine things, it's real work, and we're not here because it's a job. I think everybody that's at
Oh,
life.
look, I definitely feel that and understand that. Yeah, for
So
sure.
I think,
While it does undo us, it also restores us, because the way we work is, undoes us, because the holistic level of care does mean that we are more involved, and we are feeling things alongside the people, yet still holding it in that professional space, but we kind of allow ourselves to feel more later. But because of the storytelling and that deep work, it is also incredibly restorative as well.
I feel I come out of so many processes and funerals, even the really just dreadfully sad, hardcore ones, so enlivened by the precious gift of life and the randomness of humans and who people are, and what a quirky little organism we are. Like, I feel people do say to me, how do you do it? And I go, this, I really feel so alive in this work, because it's so real and so true. And I think that's the secret, to not push away or pull away, but to lean into it.
There's something incredibly special about kind of just being with someone in their end stages and caring for the loved ones around all of that as well.
Yeah, and just understanding you can do sacred work in the hellscape of 21st century capitalism, and it can happen, and you can do it, and, and we do it. And I think in LGBTQI plus communities, I think we really lead the way. And I know that the level of connection that we've had and the value of the work that we've done is always appreciated. But when we look after our own, there's just a whole other level. That
Well,
comes
look,
back
we're getting close to the end. It's been a really wonderful conversation. Like, I really, really appreciate your time. There was a couple of questions, or one, I think we sort of touched on it. It was sort of about, this person doesn't want to have a funeral. They just want to get together in a pub with no formalities. We've sort of touched on it, but that sounds like that's very doable.
Yeah, and you don't even need a celebrant if you don't want to. It can just be a friend gets up and you make a toast. It doesn't have to have a formal structure. It can. There's a point of having a structure, but that structure does not have to be there if it's not going to someone else.
I think what I notice for families that choose to not have a formal ceremony is, in the first part, when I said there's the parallel level of care of the person who's died, a funeral is a rite of separation or leave taking. It's a rite of being betwixt and between, and it's also a rite of reincorporation. So what leaves your life when someone you love dies? How does that shape you? And what do you take with you? So you don't need a funeral to do that, but you also don't need your person to just disappear and be unceremoniously cremated by some crappy end of blah, 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 right?
For sure.
So we look after many people who have what's called a no service, no attendance, or a direct cremation, but we care for them beautifully in our mortuary. We dress them in their clothes. Their friends might come and have a viewing or a being with in our premises, and crack open, a bottle of wine, or play music, or just spend time. The really salient point for Life Rites is you can spend time, and you can take time, and there's no rush. So you don't need a funeral in that sense, but don't think that your people who love you, whose lives continue when yours is complete, won't want something.
Something,
and,
for sure.
and won't want possibly to say goodbye to you, or won't want to be accompanied through the rite. It doesn't have to be the bells and whistles funeral with some random person.
Do you think people are made, I know we're going a little bit over time, but do you think people are made aware of, well, it sounds like people are made aware of what they can do once they start talking to you?
Yes.
There's a lot of probably like, oh, what am I doing this for? What do you do? And then it feels like you probably give them a lot of options, and they start to sink into it themselves and think, oh, okay, so I can have this or do that, or
I think people know clearly what they don't want. They don't know what they
yeah,
have available. And
yeah,
when we
yeah,
say to people, actually, what would you like to do? They go, well, I feel like blah, blah, blah. And then we can go, yeah, you can do that. So people do actually know. That's one thing without doubt, for the last 20 years of talking to people, you clear away the perceived obstacles and the perceived barriers and those really shocking diminished forms that none of us want to inhabit. And you say, if you had your choice, what would you want to do? Like, what feels right? People know, we know. And our job is as much to just clear away the obstacles for people, give them information if they want it, and lead them or get out of the way. So I think the big thing to watch out for is thinking that price is the only indicator of value.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cut price, cremate your person, don't have a funeral, and without going into explicit detail, how we care for our dead is one of our greatest responsibilities, because our dead can't advocate for themselves. So I'm all for direct and unattended cremations and funerals, but certainly to maintain the dignity of the person in whose care that we're taking on as the care. That's really important. So it's a tricky world out there to know who's who in the zoo and who's offering what. But again, that's where you come back to, it's never too early to start talking about what's important to you. There's no dumb questions. And, we really don't talk about our mortality very much. And yet it's all going to come to all of it, each of us.
absolutely.
So,
Look, I love talking about it. So
we're
I've been
just
delighted to talk to you both tonight. Where
Thank
can
you.
people find you? How do they kind of connect with Life Rites Funerals?
We've got socials. So Instagram is Life Rites Funerals.
Yeah.
LIFERITES.
Yes.
Funerals.
Yes. Yeah.
I have spelt that out a lot.
I'm sure.
LIFERITES.
Yeah.
Funerals.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're on Facebook. We have a website, www.liferites.
And might I say the website's very comprehensive.
Yes, it's
There's
big.
a lot of information, but it's really a good place to land just to get a sense.
Yeah.
All our emails and phone numbers are there. We have a beautiful funeral premises at 118 Durham Street, Hurstville.
So people could just drop in and just say hello to get a bit of a...
If there's anyone listening that would like to ring us up and in a consult, then I'll give you a special discount for being here today. And really, we're just here to respond to your questions. We spend a lot of time in community conversations and development, and it's really important for us to let you know that we're here, and that here is safe and available to you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, look, I know I have nothing but love for you, and I'm sure after everyone hears this, they'll have nothing but love for what you do and who you are. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us and listening to our passion and what we do.
Yeah, look, we'll definitely share the video. The video will be up on the ACON YouTube channel, and I'm sure we'll be able to make it available through all of your networks and channels, so we can spread the word far and wide.
Yeah.
Thank you, Russ. Be well.
All right.
Lovely night, everybody.
And thank you to everyone for coming in. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.